Those old Romans knew a thing or two when they spoke about the Genius Loci, or spirit of place. They just weren't referring to their rather strange pantheon of minor gods of every location everywhere they went, but instead of the feeling that some places create in many of us. It comes, I suppose, from an aggregation of the landscape, the buildings, the history, the sounds, the smells, the people, even the food, that together conjures a recognition and affection for particular places and takes us back to them time and time again. Which areas attract you with their spirit of place depends upon your past experiences. As a child of England's east coast, I find the crash of waves soothing, and even the screech of herring gulls evokes days of happiness. North Yorkshire's coast is more harsh than my native Suffolk, especially when the wind drives down from the Arctic, and even a sunny day can produce a chill that bites through layers of clothing. The cliffs, steep-sided harbours and wide sandy beaches of this particular area combine with the changes that people have made when they've built here and lived here and sometimes fought here. Now Scarborough sprawls across two sandy bays with an active harbour and a fish dock right on the promenade. Between the bays, a large promontory dominates the town and reminds us that this isn't just another Victorian resort created by the railways out of nothing. Scarborough has long been a key point of access from the sea to the northeast of England. Bronze Age and Iron Age people lived and fished here, so did the Romans and probably the Vikings and the Anglo-Saxons. The massive keep and curtain wall is Norman, and Henry II, less than 90 years after the conquest, began to rebuild the castle, along with a new town beneath its walls at the same time. A key point for accessing and controlling North Yorkshire, the castle played a role in almost every upheaval in the region, from the Pilgrimage of Grace through the Civil War right up to World War I, when it was shelled heavily from the sea. All that history colours the character of Scarborough, but it is as a resort, which grew enormously after the railway arrived in 1845, that the town boomed commercially, and a quick stroll around the street shows how it once offered everything from grand seafront hotels to small bed and breakfast establishments. Now the big hotels are being run on the cheap and allowed to deteriorate by a national chain, unfortunately, but the smaller establishments are divided into apartments often used for holidaymakers. And despite being a little down at heel, it is a great shame that its funicular cliff railways have now been closed for nearly 2 years, with absolutely no sign of reopening. Scarborough remains a very popular place. Even on the coldest and wettest April days, the sands are regularly patrolled by families and dog walkers, even though the northerly winds may be nipping at exposed ears and noses. And the slightest sign of sunshine and the children are out there digging holes, transporting water and smiling happily while their parents seek shelter wherever they can find it. Rain or shine, the promenade is the place to be, with its excellent fish and chip cafes, ice cream parlours, pubs and bars. It may be April and the temperatures may not be in double figures, but that doesn't matter, not to the visitors or apparently the locals. And the people working in the shoreside establishments are friendly in that very English, unforced way, with not an insincere "have a nice day" to be heard. And that's a picture repeated up and down this coast. Travel south to Bridlington, past Filey and Flamborough Head, very dramatic in themselves, and there's another harbour, another small fishing fleet trawling the local waters, another small funfair providing excitement for the youngsters holidaying in the thousands of static caravans that sit just inland from the coast itself. This is Bridlington, and there's a sense of constant movement and restlessness, mostly from the sea itself, rolling across the beaches, swirling around the harbour mouth, while the boats move in and out, some fishing, some carrying paying fishermen, giving the tourists a taste of the unforgiving sea. Bridlington has been an important port since Norman times, exporting grain from the wheat fields of the Yorkshire wolds, as well as having a substantial fishing industry. Once one of the stopping points for the herring fleets that travelled up and down the east coast. And it's still said to have the largest lobster fishing business in Europe. It's a town that grew up around the port and a large priory, but once again it was the arrival of the railway bringing urban factory workers to the seaside that boosted the town's growth. The shabbiness brought by the decline of the holiday business, at least in the town centres, is evident, but it has a charm of its own, and like many other old seaside towns, Bridlington is now acquiring some credibility as a green destination, and a few trendy shops to go with it. Go north from Scarborough and the coast becomes even more dramatic as the North Yorks Moors National Park sweeps down to the sea. High cliffs, deep ravines and wide sandy beaches alternate along the coastline with Robin Hood's Bay, a little jewel of a village, clinging to the side of a cliff and presenting a challenge to all but the fittest and youngest to explore before climbing back that final exhausting journey through the narrow streets up to the only official car park. Keep north and the coast will take you down into the valley of the Esk and wonderful Whitby, a town that seems to have sidestepped the decline of the English seaside holiday resort and moved straight on to become an example of what every coastal town would like to be. Sitting on the estuary of the River Esk, Whitby has clearly been an attractive option for settlers for many centuries. Not only does it have a sizable harbour, its headlands look across the North Sea, offering natural fortifications. Small wonder the Romans had a lighthouse here and possibly a way station, and the Saxons were in occupation even before the abbey was founded in 656 AD. It was the Abbess Hild who founded a monastery for men and women at Whitby. That's how they did it in those days. And it became one of the most important religious centres, albeit briefly, in the Anglo-Saxon world, at least until Viking raids a couple of hundred years later forced its abandonment. After another 150 years or so, the Benedictines built a sprawling, extravagant and elaborate building in the Gothic style, and for the next 4 or 5 centuries Whitby Abbey became a powerful and very important force in the politics of the north of England, alongside the great landowning families of the region like the Percys, and right up until 1539, when Henry VIII suppressed the monasteries as he sought to reinforce his treasury and wipe away a source of resistance to his break with Roman Catholicism. But Whitby continued to prosper as a fishing port, as a market town, and later a whaling port and a base for the explorer Captain James Cook. In fact, luck seems to have been a constant factor in Whitby's continued well-being, helping to, sustain its trade and build its reputation. It was something of a public relations coup, in a sad sort of way, when Queen Victoria made Whitby jet fashionable when she wore jet jewellery for her lifelong mourning for the death of Prince Albert. The rest of Victorian society took it up as well, and now, of course, jet is high fashion again, at least amongst the goth community, and shops selling jet jewellery outnumber all others along the cobbled Church Street, which leads to the 199 steps rising up to the Abbey on the hill. And the town has become a place of pilgrimage for goths and steampunk enthusiasts with a Victorian taste, and many others, thanks to Bram Stoker, who stayed in the town and set part of his book Dracula there. They come and they dress in period costume as they wander the town, and for a few days each April and November, Whitby steps back in time to a strange, slightly distorted reflection of its Victorian heyday. Of course, the town isn't immune from today's pressures and today's catastrophes. Hotels and some shops have shut in the wake of the pandemic and the economic stresses of Brexit. But you have few doubts that Whitby is already bouncing back. In fact, this whole region, the string of harbours and seaside towns that curve around the eastern edge of the North York moors, has a sense of permanence, of tradition and unchanging natural beauty. It doesn't matter here whether the sun is shining or the rain is lashing down, and the rain really can lash down on this northeast coast. Somehow the place works with the rain, and despite the sometimes bitter wind, this coast exudes drama and still offers warmth from the people and the businesses. There's always a cosy cafe or an excellent fish and chip restaurant to which you can retreat. And it offers history at every turn, from Scarborough's massive castle and its enclosing curtain wall to the always evocative Whitby Abbey, stark as the cold winds sweep through the ruins even on a sunny day. We go back time and time again. The spirit of this place is always calling to us.